When a man begins to truly awaken, he inevitably drifts away from the herd. This withdrawal is not born of malice, but from a realization that standard modes of connection no longer hold water. He observes that the vast majority of social discourse orbits around status, idle gossip, or habitual grievances. Once his vision clears, participating in these loops becomes increasingly difficult. He is not acting out of bitterness or isolating himself to prove a point. He has simply ceased the pursuit of things that no longer matter. He begins to perceive the theatrical nature of daily interaction, the desperate hunger to be accepted, the need to belong, and the pressure to recite the correct lines. Without fanfare, he quietly recedes. Passers-by may still offer a wave, but the tether is gone because, in truth, it was never firmly attached. He hasn't severed ties or burned bridges. He has merely stopped performing. In that cessation, a natural distance emerges. This marks the genesis of true solitude, not loneliness, but a necessary expanse between the man he was conditioned to be and the man he is becoming. He sees with startling clarity that the glue holding most social circles together is not substance. It is not depth or truth. It is a mixture of routine, convenience, and shared delusions. People bond over mutual dissatisfaction, the chase for prestige, and the defense of ideologies they have never personally examined. He remembers doing the same. He remembers thinking this was intimacy, but now it registers only as static. He notices the frantic way people speak, simply to murder the silence. He sees the energy spent on maintaining a facade, the ceaseless demand for validation and consensus. Once he lays down his own need for these crutches, he sees how heavily others lean on them. He realizes many relationships endure not because of affinity, but because both parties have silently agreed to never break character. He understands why people cling to the familiar. He still listens, but he refuses to play along. That internal shift creates a chasm. To the external observer, he appears unchanged. He remains polite. He has not vanished. Yet the foundation has shifted. Those around him sense a change in frequency. They intuit that he is no longer auditioning for their approval. He is no longer entangled in the social game. Some view this autonomy with admiration. Others find it unnerving because he has become unreadable. He is no longer projecting an image. He offers no flattery, no competition, and no entertainment. This makes him difficult to categorize. They may label him distant or changed, but what they are truly reacting to is the fact that he no longer fits the mold they cast for him. They preferred him when he reflected their values. Now, he reflects something else, something grounded and indifferent to applause. People see him, yet they do not know him. To know him now would require them to look at what he sees, and few are willing to face that reality. There was a time when he believed connection meant constant involvement. But as his focus turned inward, that definition collapsed. He stopped engaging out of mere obligation. This was not a reduction in care, but a removal of the need for others to define his existence. He still treasures connection, but not if it requires a tax of constant availability or emotional theater. He does not retreat in anger. He simply finds no sustenance in relationships built on pretense. To those addicted to transactional interactions, his demeanor feels cold. In reality, he has just retired from the role. He no longer speaks to fill the air. He no longer triangulates his self-worth through the gaze of others. What rises in that empty space is not loneliness, but clarity, a calm sovereignty that keeps him rooted regardless of who arrives or departs. He has embraced honesty, and from that honesty, a profound freedom takes shape. From the outside, solitude is often misdiagnosed. To the sleeping world, being alone signals a defect, a lack of purpose, or tribe. But for the man who sees, solitude is a different landscape. He no longer stuffs his hours with distractions to avoid his own company. He no longer hunts for noise. He has learned to sit in the stillness without rushing to end it. What the crowd calls loneliness, he recognizes as unfamiliar peace. He realizes that the busy work of a typical day is often just noise masquerading as purpose. In solitude, he encounters himself without distortion. There is no audience to impress. While initially jarring, this clarity becomes his reservoir of strength. He does not shun people, but he no longer consumes them to feel whole. This self-sufficiency confuses the observer. They assume he is depressed or arrogant. The truth is, he is simply content. He has faced the silence most run from, and found it to be not a void, but a sanctuary. As his internal stability grows, his external predictability vanishes. He no longer adheres to the unspoken script of social niceties. He does not feign emotions to make others comfortable. To those who feed on external validation, this is starving work. They interpret his neutrality as judgment, his silence as rejection. He is none of these things. He has simply resigned from the job of perception management. He sees that much of human connection is a mutual performance. By stepping out of that pact, he disrupts the room simply by being there. The absence of the usual signals flattery and ego-stroking makes others anxious. Many old friendships dissolve, not through conflict, but because the ground beneath them has crumbled. He notices that many bonds were forged in the fires of shared complaints. When he stops feeding those fires, the flame dies out. He no longer nods in agreement just to fit in. He has lost the taste for conversations that lack substance. This is not a rejection of people. It is a reallocation of energy. True friendship becomes rarer and simpler. It is no longer based on shared delusions, but on mutual recognition. Two sovereign beings walking parallel paths. These connections cannot be forced. They arise only when two people no longer need each other to be fixed. Social interaction is governed by invisible laws. Validate my delusion, and I'll validate yours. He used to follow these laws. Now, the dynamic breaks. He offers no false comfort. He refuses to pretend. He is finished with the small betrayals of self that keep the peace but rot the soul. This isn't rebellion. It is alignment. It is disruptive because it highlights how much of society relies on the avoidance of truth. People feel the shift. The comfortable exchange of distraction is gone. Without him fueling the dynamic fails. Conversations falter. Invitations slow down. Not because he has done wrong, but because he stopped playing the game. He has not rejected them. He has just stopped propping up a structure he knows is hollow. As this understanding matures, a paradox emerges. He needs less material gain, less social proof. He stops seeking permission to exist. As this need evaporates, so do the relationships parasitic on it. The clearer his vision, the quieter his life. Not because he is closed, but because his previous life was cluttered with the search for approval. Without that search, most social noise becomes obsolete. He stops trying to explain himself or measure his worth by his social footprint. To the world, this looks like withdrawal. To him, it feels like arriving. He settles into something solid. He still values connection, but only when it is organic. He hasn't become cold. He has become independent. Once awake, he cannot go back to sleep. He looks inward and finds quiet. He looks outward and sees a world still dreaming roles being played, masks being worn. He does not envy their connection because he knows the price tag, conformity. He will not trade his truth for the comfort of the crowd. Yet, a part of him remembers. A part of him hopes not for a crowd, but for an equal. Someone who has also seen behind the curtain. Someone who does not require him to dim his light to make them feel safe. Such a meeting is rare, and he would rather walk in silence than mime in conversation. So he walks alone. Not because he despises company, but because in a world of sleepwalkers, authenticity is worth more than acceptance. Eventually, the solitude feels natural. It is no longer lonely. It is just quiet. He accepts it as the byproduct of honesty. While others build walls of noise, he builds a home in the stillness. They assume he is lonely, believing any company is better than none. But they confuse isolation with absence. He is not absent. He is fully present. He has simply chosen the spaciousness of truth over the suffocation of illusion. This is the final threshold. He does not need the world to wake up for him to be at peace. He does not need consensus to be clear. He walks alone, not as an outcast, but as a man who has accepted the price of truth and found it to be a bargain.